Hi, everyone. So I want to talk about a bit of an epiphany that I had over the weekend, speaking to a friend of mine who was seeking advice on a conflict situation. And we had a good long talk. It was several hours, and I got a few good takeaways from it I want to share with you. So when you're in a fight with somebody, like a conflict or an argument, a battle royale, whatever you want to call it, the conflict is imaginary. And that sounds kind of strange and weird, but think about this a second. Conflicts and arguments are a battle of two imagination. Excuse me, a battle of two imaginations, if I can talk. And to illustrate this, I want to use a excerpt from a movie called The Other Guys. It's got Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell in it. And if you haven't heard of the lion versus tuna argument, go check it out. But Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell are getting into this argument, and Mark Wahlberg is basically yelling at Will Ferrell, and he says, if I were a lion and you were a tuna, I'd swim out into the freaking ocean and I would eat you. And then Will Ferrell's like, really? A lion? Swimming in the ocean? I assume off the coast of South Africa. 20-foot waves. No, you wander into our school of tuna, 20, 30, 800-pound tunas. No, you've wandered into our school, and guess what? We've now had a taste of lion, and we've decided, we've communicated, we like lion, and we will construct an apparatus, a breathing apparatus, and set up a beachhead, and we will hunt you down on land and kill you and your family. And Mark Wahlberg's like, how are you going to do that? And he's like, we will construct a breathing apparatus out of kelp. It won't work forever, it'll be temporary, but 45 minutes, hour 45, easy. And he's like, did that go the way you thought it would go? No. But the whole argument itself is just really, really silly, but it's very tangible because it's a battle of ideas, okay? And when we get into a conflict with somebody, when we get into an argument, it's very easy to win arguments against narcissists once you know what you're doing, because their arguments always come from a very simple version of the truth. They're usually wrong on purpose, okay? Sometimes they're not, but almost always, whenever they're angry about something, they're almost always automatically wrong. And so that makes it very easy to win, because you just say, look it up, right? Go ask somebody. But they usually start off from a wrong premise, and it's usually oversimplified. And so you say, well, that doesn't sound right. Okay? What drives a conflict, and I've said this in other videos, but what drives a conflict, you have to participate for there to be a conflict. If you don't participate, there's no conflict. It's just a crazy person yelling at a quiet person, okay? Would you ever try and go start a fight with a mime? No, right? Because you realize if you saw somebody yelling and screaming at a mime, you would just automatically think, wow, that person's crazy, okay? Well, it's the same thing with fighting and arguing. Hold on. Can you close my door, please? Bye-bye. I meant with you on the other side of the door. What you need, sweetie?
Can I have fruit?
Sweetie, you just ate dinner.
But fruit's healthy.
I understand that. I'll make you fruit in a little bit.
I want apples and they're healthy.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with that. But I just fed you. Okay? We'll do fruit in a little bit.
Okay.
Out of the room. Out of the room. I love you. Would you like to clean? Do you want to go clean your room? Do you want to clean your room, yes or no? Do you want to clean or have fun?
No.
And go find some fun.
No.
Or I will put you to work cleaning your room. 1, 2, 3. Close the door. Oh, that's a perfect example of coming into conflict with a child. Anyways, where was I? Oh, yeah. it's very, very easy to win against narcissists, especially once you realize that the conflict is imaginary, okay? Uh, if you were to shut your eyes and listen to two people arguing in a foreign language, a language that you don't know, it would be very boring for you if all you had was the audio. Even more so, if you were trying to read your foreign friend's text messages back and forth in a language that you could not read or understand, it would have no meaning to you whatsoever. So the very nature of a conflict is absolutely imaginary. It is absolutely mental. It exists only in your head, and you can think of it in terms of two imaginations doing imaginary battle with each other, right? 95% of the time, an argument or a conflict does not turn into a real thing. It does if somebody punches you in the face. That's a real thing. Or the arguments over the power bill and the electricity goes out, right? That's a transition into the real world. But for most everything, it's just a battle of imaginations. And so when you realize that, it's real easy to budget the number of fucks you're going to give about this particular subject, right? Because it's imaginary anyways. You know, when you fight with someone, it's very common to perceive a threat, especially when your life has been defined by these cycles and cycles and cycles of arguments and conflicts and abuse. And if you don't do this, well, then I will be forced to do that, right? It's like, no, nobody's going to force you to do shit. You know, we get into this habit of threat assessment. You know, detect the threat, perceive the threat, respond to the threat, defend yourself. And so then your defensive action registers as a threat on their radar. And so they go through threat detection, threat assessment, threat mitigation, employ their defensive strategy, and it comes right back at you. And it's volleyball back and forth, back and forth. And you get into the cycle of two people believing that they are defending each other. And there's nothing to defend against anyways. It's imaginary. Don't bother. It's imaginary. It doesn't matter if you, quote, win or lose 90 to 95% of the time. Redefine how you win. The victory for you is to send them packing, and not by asserting your dominance and your superior intelligence over somebody else. That's so much of that is what drives these things, right? When they're wrong, because they're wrong on purpose, right? If you ever want to fight with somebody, that's a great way to kick it off. They're wrong. And it's like, okay, prove it to me. A good example is, if you think somebody's cheating on you, and they say, well, who would I even be cheating with? Like who? Like name somebody. You can't name someone. It's like, I'm not required to come present my evidence. I'm telling you that you are acting shady. Or, I've seen this it can be a problem. It could be something shady, but it could not. And I'm letting you know, if you continue doing that thing right there, it's a problem. Take that for what you will, right? So that makes conflict so much easier because you can redefine what winning and losing is, okay? Because when you're arguing with somebody who will never ever say the words, you know what, you're right, I'm sorry, then how do you define victory? Don't define your victory that way. Okay, that's what I was trying to do for all these years, and I realized it's just stupid, because I'm the one that's willing to say, oh, you know what, you're right, I'm wrong, I'm sorry, right? Because that's what I was taught. That when you're entangled with someone who refuses to ever say those words, they're not like you. It helps to acknowledge that and realize that. And if they're not like you, then you have to define victory much differently. Okay? Victory for you is just shutting them the fuck up, right? So in the conversation I had with my friend, the conflict, and I'll give you all the short version, was he lives with his brother, and there's an issue over video games and noises coming from his room, and his brother doesn't like all the noise coming from the room all the time, but his brother kind of just keeps his mouth shut about it. And so he asks his brother, hey, you got a problem with me playing my games and live streaming my games and all that? And his brother says no. But he hears from his family that his brother actually really secretly despises the games and the noise and is annoyed and is just sitting on it, right? But every time he tries to talk to his brother about it, his brother says, no, we're cool. And then one day, his brother just flies off the handle and busts in the room, and they have this big confrontation that happens to get live streamed on video. And his brother jumps him and starts trying to start a fight, and that turned into video evidence, and some police charges were filed, etc. And so he says, well, how should I have handled this? And so number one is what I told him is, in a cohabitation situation, start off by being proactive about being the advocate for a non-hostile but friendly environment. It's easy enough to knock on your brother's door and say, hey, I'm about to stream. Is that cool with you? Or, give him a heads up, hey, this afternoon I'm going to be streaming. Thought I'd let you know. Or even just say, hey, when's a good time for me to stream where it's not going to bug you? And just let him declare a time, and you say, okay, cool. Right? You got to work together. That kind of stuff. But even at that, what are you hoping to accomplish by filing criminal charges, by filing assault charges? Is that going to improve your long-term relationship with your brother? No. Well, what kind of victory is that? When you're poisoning the rest of your life, your relationship with your brother for the rest of your life over damn video games. Now, that's not a victory. So first of all, he's not going to learn how to not be annoyed by you. Okay? When people get annoyed, it's not a learned behavior, right? Tolerance is very difficult to just learn, right? At best, he learned it's probably not a good idea to beat down a door and attack his brother while a video camera's running. And that's about the limit of education you're going to get. You have to balance what is your victory that you're going for here. Because as far as I can tell, it's all just a losing situation. And you could have just said, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I'll turn the volume down. Or you know what? Let me just hop off the game here. I'll make this my last game. And then I'll take a break. That seems fair and reasonable, right? We've all been there. When you're playing the game and somebody's trying to be on the phone or anything like that, you just say, oh, shit, let me turn it down for you. My bad. Let me shut the door. Or, I don't know, because your bedrooms are next to each other, why don't you just move the gaming console, to the opposite side of your domicile and stream over there? There are plenty, you had plenty of opportunities, starting from the moment that your family was telling you that there were grumblings. You had multiple opportunities to resolve the situation. But even whenever it did come to a head, let's say your brother's crazy, still would have just been easy enough to just say, oh, okay, you know what, I'll turn it down. Or here, I'll turn it down, or maybe I'll, move it. Speak to each other. Right? But all of this, it goes into the fact that the conflict is all in your head. There's either no conflict until somebody flies off the handle, right? Or in the case of his brother, the conflict is imaginary, and his imagination was that he was being oppressed by his brother's constant video gaming and live streaming and everything like that. It's all imaginary, and it's all for naught. What do you get out of it? Nothing. So redefine how you declare a victory. Somebody loves to have conflict, fine. Don't participate. Don't get pulled into that pattern of threat assessment and issuing a defense, right? Oh, so now you're going to do blank. Well, then I will be forced to do blank. Oh, nobody's forcing you to do anything. that was how you were programmed. It's programming, and you need to knock it off because it's toxic, and it's the best way to make sure that you're never happy. So instead, you know what? Like, and I'll end with this. There's really no harm in just in giving somebody a non-authentic answer. Like, yeah, you're right. You say, yeah, okay, well, maybe you're right. All right, well, it sounds right. You don't have to mean it, and that's not a binding verbal contract because you always have the right to change your mind. So the victory is just send their trifling ass elsewhere for their drama, and put on headphones, play your video games. All right, thanks a lot for listening. Please like, comment, or share, and I'll see you on the next video.